As we begin tonight, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We are here tonight as a team to talk to you about the budget of Council. The questions around financial sustainability of this Council is nothing new. However, we are refusing to stick our heads in the sand. It's time we all know the full story. And once we all know the full story, it's time for us all to be part of the solution. I would now like to hand over to our Mayor, Rachel Chambers, who will take us through tonight's events.
And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you for coming tonight if you are mad. Thank you for coming if you are sad. Thank you for coming if you were just a little bit curious. And thank you to all those who are also dragged along and don't know why they're here at all. We need you to be here. Rest assured, if tonight does not answer all your questions, we will continue answering them until you feel that you have enough information. We have held and attended enough of these types of meetings to know that the usual question and answer does not allow the voices of everyone and the opinions of everyone. So tonight, we have decided to do things a little bit differently because we are discussing such an important issue tonight that we need to hear the opinions of everyone and not just a few. So what we'll be doing is we'll be doing a presentation where everyone in the room is upskilled with the same information. So then we can have informed conversations after. And what we're doing is you'll find myself, the staff and fellow councillors spread around the room, and you can go to any or all of us to ask your questions. That way, we're actually getting through 10 times the amount of questions than we would usually get through. We have invited many guests to these events. We have invited all Queensland senators, ministers of the federal cabinet, ministers of the state cabinet, and our local members, along with all media outlets. We have received many apologies, and these are available on our webpage. This page also has heaps of information pertaining to tonight, so I encourage you after tonight to go and look it up. Tonight with us, we have our federal MP, Mr. Ken O'Dowd. And Ken, if I can get you just to wave so everyone can spot him in the crowd. And we also have our state MP, Mr. Colin Boyce. I just couldn't see him before, but when he does walk in, I'll see if I can spot him for you. Council would like to thank you both for your understanding of the importance of these meetings to our community, and we hope that you stay after with all of us to answer any questions that they may have. I fell in love with the North Burnett community in 2013. I saw how you banded together in bad times. I experienced how much you cared for each other. I saw how innovative you were. And I saw heaps and heaps of untapped potential. I also saw a community that wasn't getting a fair deal. Community is the rock for local government, the anchor point on which we make all our decisions. And local government is the foundation on which all communities in Australia are built. Tonight, we will be calling on you to ignite your civic duty and assist us, to help us as a community. Our back is against the wall and we're running out of money, we're running out of time, and we're running out of options to save jobs. This isn't anything new. If you have been following us for years now, you would be very well aware of some of the issues. We have two goals for tonight. The first goal is that you will understand why we have called this Between a Rock and a Hard Place. And the second goal is you will all be inspired to help us, your councillors, your representatives, help us as a community. These meetings didn't just come out of nowhere. So We did the community consultation back in October, where we sat in the park here during the day and we had a nighttime meeting. We also did phone surveys, we also did internet surveys, we also did paper surveys about what you wanted for your region, for your town, moving forward, and it was called the Plan for Generations. We then culminated that information and we sent back to you in December a summary, if you will, of what we heard. This line was on that in December that went to every single mailbox in the North Burnett. So we actually told you that in January we were going to review the findings. In February we had budget deliberations. In March we had workshops and we draft something up. And in April, May, we would come and talk to you about a draft budget. That's why we're here. So whether you are an employee or an elected member of local government, you have to abide by 5 principles. It is legislation. Tonight, I just want to concentrate on the first 2. Transparent and effective processes and decision-making in the public interest, and sustainable development and management of assets and infrastructure, and delivery of effective services. The first one. How do we gauge public interest? So public interest is a formal engagement process, which is what we did back in October, and these are the top 10 things regionally that you told us you wanted your council to focus on. Servicing of facilities, water, roads and bridges were the top 3. However, councillors also informally engage every single day to gauge what public interest is. That's the principle number 1, we represent you. Principle number 2 is that we must sustainably develop and manage our assets and infrastructure. Now, sustainable as a definition means the costs within the revenue that we can earn. That's really important. The same rule applies to all local governments in Queensland. We all have to manage our costs within the revenue we can earn. The problem lies in we can all earn different revenues depending on our geographic boundaries. So, and I know it's probably going to be hard for you guys up the back, however, the black coastline strip that you might be able to see, they have population. So some councils actually set a budget and exceed that income before the end of the year because of the developments that happened during that year. The coastal councils rely on ratepayers as a form of income. When we move to the grey bits, so there's some grey bit just inland and there's some grey bits out west, they are the resource councils. Resource councils earn their income from mining and resource companies. And to be considered a resource council, you have to earn over 30% of your income from this particular resource industry. And then the blue in the middle are considered our remote councils. Remote councils get subsidies. Subsidies are up to 100% for their water, for their waste, for their roads, meaning it doesn't come out of council money, that they, the state or the federal government, usually the state, pays for those subsidies. And then you've got orange. Orange is, and we'll take away the inset because orange up there also means South East Queensland councils. But if we take away that inset, it is Mareeba Shire, Tableland Shire, North and South Burnett and Goondiwindi. We are the only councils that do not have subsidies, that do not have resources paying for our rates, and do not have population. So what does that look like? And I wanted to give you an example tonight. Mount Isa versus North Burnett. We have a similar amount of ratepayers. However, Mount Isa ratepayers pay $43.4 million in rates. Our ratepayers pay 17.9. So it's not the quantity of ratepayers, it's the actual quantum of ratepayers. Another interesting thing that everyone will need to wrap their heads around is assets. Mount Isa has just under $500 million of assets. This council has $1.1 billion of assets. So in effect, they have more than double the income and less than half of the assets within their geographic boundary. This is a really interesting bit of information as well. So councils rely on grants from state and federal. Even though they have that capacity to earn their own income, they also last year received $10.8 million of grants from the state and federal government, and we gratefully received $13.4 million. But can you see that they had a much larger earning potential and much less assets than us? That's just one, by the way. So grant funding. In the last 5 years, there's a lot of confusion about what grant funding is. So grant funding is the money that the state and federal government give to councils. Usually it is 50-50, meaning if we want $5 million, we have to put in 2.5, and they put in 2.5. It is not the case in a remote council where they can get up to 100% and don't have to put that money aside. It has to come with a business case because no one's going to give money for nothing. Business cases usually cost between $50,000 and $100,000. Each business case is like playing Russian roulette because you never know if you're going to get the money in the end. So you might have 4 or 5 business cases at a cost of $300,000 to $400,000, throw it to the wind and hope that you have done your job well enough that you could be the winner out of 573 other local governments in Australia or the 76 other local governments in Queensland, because it is competitive. It's also not guaranteed year on year. So they bring out a grant this year, it may not be there next year. So you can't plan for this extra money. The only grant that has been sustaining local governments year on year, decade on decade, is what's called the Federal Assistance Grants. And it came about to do what's called horizontal fiscal equalisation, which is a fancy term for an Australian standard. They wanted to bring all the councils up to a certain Australian standard, and we get $11 million a year from the federal government for that purpose. So my mother tells me that as a mayor, I'm actually a professional beggar. And looking at this, people always say, what do I get for my rates? The rate money is in orange. Grant money is in blue. This council does a lot of begging because if we only spent ratepayer money, we would barely get anything done. So, what is our ratepayer money? As I have said, rates, levies and charges are around $18 million. For every 1% that we put up rates, it's equivalent to an extra $95,000 in revenue. Fees and charges, $1 million, sales revenue, $4 million. As I said, grants, subsidies and contributions, 13. Out of that, $11 million is the federal assistance grant to bring all councils up to a certain standard. Imagine if we didn't have that. And then there's interest. So that is our entire income. The federal assistance grant, it is so important to this council, and every local government in Australia has been trying to get it raised. At the moment it is 0.55% of Commonwealth taxation revenue. Commonwealth is the common wealth. we are asking the Commonwealth to share 1%. Because 1% to this council would mean an extra $9 million a year. So these are our expenses. Employee costs, materials and services, finance and depreciation. Now depreciation is a very, very highly complex accounting term. If anyone wants to try to understand depreciation, I am going to try to explain it to you, but you're going to probably need 10 minutes after this. What it is in 1992, they brought in a standard to all Queensland local governments. It was all local governments in Australia, that you must write down a number on paper that you are holding for the future renewal of your assets. And they did this, one, it's good business practice, to make sure that councils understood where they sat in the renewals. So depreciation isn't a real, it's not that we have $40 million going out of our account. It is a number on paper that we should have for future. Depreciation is different in the business world. I used to love depreciation, love it at tax time. We do not have that tax incentive or write-off. That is what businesses use it for. So it is just here as an expense year on year. I don't think that people fully appreciate all the services that council offers. So here is a list, and for those people in the back who may not be able to read it, aerodromes, caravan parks, cemeteries, community development, arts and culture, museums, historical societies and art galleries, the community bus service, council housing, libraries and customer service, media and comms, building and planning, economic development, elected members, governance, information communication and technology, environmental services, financial services, compliance and public safety, parks and open spaces, wastewater, sport and rec, showgrounds, public amenities, quarries, public lighting. Did everyone know we did public lighting? Public health, roads, procurement, pools, natural resource management, waste collection, waste disposal, water delivery, bridges, washdown bays, and TV rebroadcasting. That is the full list of services that this council offers the community. To put it into perspective, if we used every cent of your ratepayer money on roads, we couldn't do a damn thing under that red line. And what you would get for your ratepayer money is you get one lap of the region's roads, either graded or resealed or whatever, one lap, and we would have 500 kilometres to spare that we could do a further lap on. Everything else below the line would not get funded, not a cent. So, councillors each year sit around and we try to weave together a community with the ratepayer money, the federal assistance grants that we can count on year, even though we lost, I think, $150,000 to $200,000 in the last year, they decreased it. But you can basically, count on that. We can't count on any other money coming in. And we try to weave together a community with all of these things. So just enough of this and just enough of that, and can we patch this and can we wait for that? Because that is how restrictive the budget is. So, I have a question for all of us. Do you believe that it's fair that we all pay taxes, or the majority of us pay taxes? We are a working region. We have lower unemployment levels than the Queensland state average. Do you think it's fair that your taxation income doesn't come back to us, and in fact we actually have to pay for everything ourselves just because they drew a line around us and said, you guys have to pay for all the assets? So the 6,287 ratepayers in this region, you've got to pay for the $1.1 billion of assets, the majority of which are roads. Have you ever seen anyone from outside this region on our roads? Because if you have, send them home, because they're not paying for them. That's how ludicrous the situation is. So another misunderstanding is who's the boss. Councillors have two bosses, or we have like 7,000 voters and one boss. So you all are our bosses, and every 4 years you get to elect new ones. We also have another boss, it's the state government. So what people don't understand about local government is we exist only underneath the state. We are not a government in our own right. We are a body corporate of the state that only exists to maintain the state's assets. Whatever legislation they write is what we have to adhere to, because we are a product of them. So our boss is also this guy, who I think you all should know by now because he was the health minister last year during COVID. His name is Minister Stephen Miles. He is our boss of local government. You guys can sack us every 4 years. He can sack us tonight if he feels like it. And he did sack Logan Council and Ipswich, or not he did, the position sacked both those councils in the last term. I'd also like to point out that the councillors are the boss of the CEO. So and look, I try not to read social media, it's bad for my mental health. However, in some of the things that I have read, they have said, and why isn't the CEO speaking at these things? You know why? It's not her budget. It's councillors' budget. Once we're done with the budget, we give it to the CEO with the priorities that we have assigned, and then the CEO carries it out. So if any councillor anywhere in Queensland says that they're not accountable for a budget, they are lying. Then on top of that, we also have what's called QTC, QAO and OIA. QTC is Queensland Treasury Corp. They are the borrowing entity for Queensland state government and Queensland local government. They are the ones that look at our finances and say yay or nay to any borrowings. Then we have the Queensland Audit Office. The Queensland Audit Office audits us, our financials, every 12 months and tells us whether we are considered sustainable or not. Sustainable, only spending as much as you can earn within your geographic boundary. And the OIA is an interesting little feature that this government put in about 18 months to 2 years ago. And that stands for the Office of the Independent Assessor. And that's where now all complaints about councillors go there to be investigated. It's as easy as an online form.